Hello, today I'm going to be starting a gauge swatch. This video is going to go towards making that video I've been putting off for a while of actually sharing with everybody how to make these really lovely Tunisian crochet mittens. I decided to make my mittens using acrylic yarn. This is done in Red Heart Super Saver, which I really like for doing something like this because they need to be very durable. Something I can throw in the dryer if they get wet. I really enjoy the bright colors. And acrylic is great for using for outdoor gear, and I make these for my kids as well. Wool would also be a really nice option for making mittens. It's very warm, naturally water repellent. I live in Ottawa, which gets pretty cold this time of year. I think this morning wind chill was in the -20s Celsius. And these were the mittens I wore when I went outside for my walk. They are double thick, so there's this sort of thick lining, and on the outside you have sort of multicolored yarn. I have a bad habit of buying variegated multicolored yarn, and then every time I try to crochet with it, the colors go in weird clumping patterns that I don't like. But I found that this pattern actually works really well for really bringing out the nice multicolored yarns without being kind of weird, because it forms like this nice striping pattern, and having sort of these rows in between kind of breaks up in case they're clumping in weird ways. In order to make these, first thing you have to know is the gauge, or sort of what your tension and stitch size is, to find out how many stitches and how many rows to create a certain size. Oftentimes you'll see gauge on clothing and things like that. You have to do a sort of a test swatch to see how your project will turn out before committing to hours and hours on it. I've made a lot of these mittens. They take about 5 hours total now for me, but I can go pretty fast. However, I do make them in different sizes, and I do need also to know what the gauge size is. And today I'll do a little bit of the math for it. So you will need a measuring tape, centimeters or inches, not really going to matter. This will work fine, or you can also use something like this, which is what I'm going to use today. I already know the gauge that I'm going to work in, but today I want to teach you how to figure out your gauge. This one has a nice window, which is 10 inches by 4, or sorry, 10 centimeters by 4, but 10 centimeters is equal to about 4 inches if you're doing your math that way. So my test fabric that I'm going to make, which will be done in this stitch pattern, but only in one color because it's easier that way for doing a gauge, will be 4 inches or 10 centimeters across. However, if you're using bulky yarn, it'll probably be less. If you're using a thinner yarn, it might be more. Different brands have some variety in them. And just using this nice variegated shades of blue. So I'm going to make a chain. I want the chain to be at least this distance. We're not going to be cutting the yarn at the end of this gauge, so we're not going to be wasting anything. We're just going to unravel it and then use it for when we make the mittens. If you're new to Tunisian crochet, it's also a nice chance to practice doing your return passes and doing the Tunisian knit stitch. As with most crochet, we're going to start with a chain stitch, which is just yarn over, pull through. Now I don't need to make this huge, but I need to make it probably about 5 inches or so. So you want to have it bigger than your window. Notice how there's a lot of stretch. This is why we do our gauge. And that's probably going to be wide enough. So let's see how many stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 18, 20. Now I like to work in the bottom loop. Some people just like to work through their chain stitch. Doesn't matter because we are not going to be measuring at the very base. So pick what you like to do and stay consistent with that. I am planning on making a lot of mittens this year. I'm not quite sure what I'll do with them yet. If I make enough, I might apply for a local craft show and sell them there. They might become presents for people. Or, might just keep them in the house because kids are constantly losing things. Perhaps donate them to the local school or shelters as well. So starting with the second chain from hook, I'm just going to insert the yarn over, pull up a stitch. Last chain stitch always seems a little bit tight, but with some wiggling we will get it through. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We have 20 loops on our hook. Now for the return pass, let me just back up here a bit. Start going in autopilot. So first we need to build up our height. We're making kind of like a bunch of little rectangles for any math nerds out there. I guess we're going to add them all up till we get the right volume, the right integrals. So yarn over, pull through once. That is for our height. Then the return pass. It's called an extended return pass. We're going to yarn over, pull through one, yarn over, pull through two, yarn over one, yarn over two, all the way to the end. And your yarn is going to do weird things. It's going to curl. That's why we make our swatch bigger than what we plan on measuring. So yeah, totally making this nice little curl. Very pretty. Totally normal. Here I am rushing through again. So we got to the end of the row. We're going to do Tunisian knit stitch. So in Tunisian, we end up having this sort of little loop here. These two vertical bars. I'm going to insert the hook between those two vertical bars from front and then to back. Pick up a loop. Between the two bars from front to back, pick up a loop. And Tunisian crochet is kind of weird in that things don't really start to look right until you're a few rows in. You really have to trust the process. greater heights, yarn over, pick up 1, yarn over, go through 1, yarn over, go through 2, 1. And we're going to do that all the way to the end. And we're just going to keep doing the Tunisian knit stitch until we get enough rows to go 4 inches or 10 centimeters plus an extra couple. You'll see here that the Tunisian stitch has a lot of natural curl to it. Okay, now before I sort of skipped into this, once we get to the end, it kind of looks weird and you have to figure, well, where do I stick my hook now? So this is the previous row right here. You'll see it almost looks like 2 chain stitches. So remember, we did the yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. So here's 1 chain stitch, 2 chain stitch, and then we're going to insert here in this one. This is also the stitch that connected us to the row below. When we insert, we want to make sure that we grab 2 strands of yarn. It's probably the more difficult, maybe the most difficult part of Tunisian crochet is where to stick the yarn when you get to the end. With practice, you'll get there. Luckily, after we do the gauge, the rest of the mitten is done in the round, so you're not actually going to have to find that end stitch correctly. So take your best guess when doing the swatch, because it will not matter when we do the mittens. Here again, we're at the end. Don't stress it. Doesn't really matter too much. If we were making a flat rectangle, then you would need to be putting it into the right spot. We'll just change up the angle a little bit after we've done a few rows. See a bit more of what I've got going on here on the table. Here are the mittens we're working on. Got my ball of yarn, measuring tape and stuff. And I have some paper off to the side for when we get to do the math. So I've done a few rows here now. And start to see the fabric if you uncurl it and take a look. And you can see how nice and thick the back is going to be to make those nice warm mittens out of this. I also use this technique, or this Tunisian knit stitch, for making slipper socks in my house, which are nice and warm for those cold floors in the winter time. So I'm probably getting about halfway there to finishing this swatch. And as I sit here crochet, I'm also thinking that you could figure out the volume by measuring, the surface area by measuring the length and the width, and then weigh it. It'll tell you how much yarn you'd need. I'm making a worsted weight, and I have found that I generally use 2 colors, and I use 2 balls of Red Heart Super Saver, 5 or 7 ounces. And I can make a large pair of mittens plus a toque to go with it. Or I guess beanie for our neighbors to the south, including the pom-pom on top. But right now I'm using this swatch primarily to get our stitch counts that we're going to need. And these mittens are made starting at the cuff, doing some increases for the thumb, going over the fingers, and then coming back and finishing the thumb. Not too many ends to sew in at the end, but a few. And for someone who often has really bad luck with variegated yarn looking kind of strange once it gets crocheted up, this one's actually pulling really nicely. So I guess 20 stitches was my magic number. Sadly, it will be unraveled after we finish doing this swatch, and then we'll use it onto our mittens. If you visit my channel, you'll probably see that I do lots of different types of crochet. I recently posted starching some snowflakes to make them into shape. I was crocheted using mercerized crochet cotton, just sort of like a thicker thread. Also used for making doilies and lacy things. And I have quite a few patterns on my channel for making toys. Also have some of the basics there. And this form of crochet is called Tunisian crochet, which is sort of, I guess, a hybrid almost between knitting and crocheting. So you do pick up and have all your loops on at a time. I've taught, well, my 3 kids, one can crochet, but not really their thing. The middle kid is getting into crochet and has really found a liking of Tunisian crochet right now. And I've got to agree, it's probably one of the more relaxing types. Because the return pass, that's when I'm working the loops off the hook, is always the same. So if you get busy or you have things happening or you get distracted, as kids do, it's easy to find your rhythm again. Snowflakes, on the other hand, although are small and cute, I find require a lot more focus when doing, because you're always changing your stitches around. And the pattern, usually each point is sort of like each round is divided into 6 for each segment. And that segment can have lots of little components to it. I regularly meet up with my local yarn group at our local library. And I made the mistake of bringing some snowflakes to work on. And I just couldn't talk and listen and do it at the same time. So the following week I'd learned my lesson. I brought some mittens to start. I do love my local yarn group. Oh, there a little mistake there. But like I said earlier, it's not going to matter because we are doing a swatch. I'm going to unravel this in the end. And I'm not measuring right to the ends because my swatch is a little bit bigger than what I need it to be for my measurements. And once we're making the mittens, there isn't going to be ends. They're worked in a spiral. So if you're having trouble with Tunisian crochet, trying to figure out where to stick your hook end when you get to the end, this is the pattern for you. So you won't have to do that. So I've been crocheting now for about 30 minutes. A couple of minutes, I'll take a short break to get a glass of water, stretch my hand a bit. Then I will finish up this gauge swatch and show you how to do the math if you're joining, because you want to learn how to make these really wonderful mittens, but we have different yarns, different yarn sizes, some variation there. And I promise you it's some pretty basic math. All right, so we're ending here for right now. So down to our gauge swatch, which is all nice and curled up as Tunisian likes to do. I'll still need to do a few more rows to be able to fill up this square. A couple more. So take a quick break. I'll come back with another new live feed shortly.